What up? This is Zach, and there is nothing more frustrating than creating a character and doing all this work and then your character not working. So I've decided to make this series where we talk about the base classes in D&D and how they work as a whole. So I'm just going to break down a couple of different things with each class that is in the base class, no subclasses or anything, and talk about how to make them work as a whole. So hopefully we don't have to wonder why our games aren't being fun and we just know how to do it. So hopefully we can make this a little bit easier for everyone and we can have fun games in D&D. Alright, let's talk about the Paladin. First off, I think the Paladin is a fun and easy class to play. I think it's a great class for beginners, but I do think there's a lot of features and spells and things like that that we forget about while we're playing the Paladin. So hopefully we can bring some attention to those so that we don't forget about them. And yeah, so we'll break this down the same way we break down all our videos, by doing the Paladin inside of combat and then talking about the Paladin outside of combat. Alright, so the Paladin inside of combat. First off, the Paladin excels in melee combat. They are proficient with all types of armor, simple and martial weapons. So you can pick whatever weapon you want and you can have whatever armor you want, which means you can start out with a really high AC and really high damage naturally. And at level 2, you excel even further with damage because you get your Divine Smite feature. So you will get spells at level 2 and Divine Smite, which basically means when you hit a creature with an attack, you can choose to smite them using one of your spell slots to get 2d8 added to the damage that you do. And if it's a fiend or undead, you get another d8 added to that damage. You can also add another d8 for every level above first of spell slot you use. So yeah, you can do a ton of damage. And I don't think anybody's forgetting about Divine Smite. It's the bread and butter of the Paladin class. But it is easy to forget about your Aura of Protection, which allows you to add your Charisma bonus to the saves that your allies would make within 10 feet of you. You do have to be conscious for them to get that bonus added, but yeah, whatever your Charisma bonus is, adding that to their saves is going to be very helpful no matter what. So this means you as the Paladin player have to be paying attention to the combat and what's happening with your allies so that you can remind them, hey, add my Charisma bonus to this save. And as you level further, you will get an aura from your subclass, and that can vary and be a bunch of different things. You do get an aura at level 10 that allows you to make you and your allies immune to being frightened, so that is another thing to look out for once you get to those higher levels. That being said, I don't think the Paladin has to think too much about what they're doing on their turn. You just gotta run up to something, hit it, and probably smite it. So you can pay attention to your allies' turns to make sure that they can take advantage of the buffs that you get them with the different auras you have. You also get access to a couple of different types of smite through your spell casting. In order to use these, you have to use your bonus action to cast the spell, and then the next hit you do on a creature will do that effect. And you will get 3 separate kind at level 2. One that can push an enemy 10 feet, one that can frighten an enemy and make them have to use their action to run 30 feet away from you, and one that can light an enemy on fire and they'll have to make saves on their turn to not be on fire anymore. But keep in mind that these spells are concentration spells, so if you happen to miss your attack when trying to smite them, if you get hit, you'll have to make a Constitution saving throw to keep your concentration and be able to use that on your next attack. And the DC for that concentration check is going to be either half the damage that you took or 10, whatever one is higher. So if you take 22 damage from a creature, you're actually going to make a DC 11 check. But if you only take 9, you're going to have to make a DC 10 anyway. And you have to make that saving throw every time you get hit during the combat round. That being said, I think that most people would opt just to use Divine Smite and get that extra damage. But if you want to push someone or frighten someone, there are other options, and you can use those options if you'd like to. So your game plan as the Paladin is to run in, smite, and do as much damage as possible, but when it's not your turn, pay attention to what the other characters are doing so that if one of your auras can take effect and they're close enough and you can help them, they get that buff and it's not forgotten about. Also, if you decide to use your spells and use the other options you have, know the risks of using those options. That being said, if you use one of those options, you can still Divine Smite on top of that, so you're not really going to miss out on extra damage. Alright, let's move on to the Paladin outside of combat. So at first level, you will get access to your Divine Sense feature, which allows you to sense if there's any fiends, undead, or celestials within 60 feet of you or 12 squares of you. And how useful this is can vary from campaign, because maybe the bad guys aren't fiends or undead, but it could never hurt in a new environment to use this just to see if there's any undead around or fiends that are trying to mess with you. Or if you're just in a really shady part of a dungeon where you're like, man, I think there could be an undead or a fiend here. But keep in mind that they have to be out of cover for you to find them, so you won't be able to see the ghost if it's hiding behind a rock. You also get the Lay on Hands ability at level 1, which gives you a healing pool of 5 times your Paladin level. So as an action, you can heal people as much as you want from that pool. But this also gives you the ability to end diseases and poisoning by using 5 points from that pool. So the Paladin is just a good healer outside of combat because you don't want to take your action away from you doing damage in combat. Hopefully you have someone else in your party who can do that as a bonus action and still take attacks. But the Paladin is the type of healer that is going to be like, hey, we're done with combat. Who needs healing? Did anyone get poisoned? What's going on? And then you can move on from there. Paladins normally also have a very commanding presence, which is represented by their charisma casting. So having a high charisma is going to be a priority for a Paladin, but you're going to have better charisma skill checks because of that. But you can also use things like Zone of Truth or Command to get the things you want and get to the bottom of any mysteries that are based around people and interrogations in your campaign. But yeah, in my experience, I've seen a lot of Paladins interrogate people. And this is definitely because of those 2 spells. With Command, you can tell somebody to approach you, to halt, to flee, or to grovel or drop, and they have to make a wisdom saving throw and be compelled to do that one thing. So when you're going to interrogate someone, you can just say halt, and they'll stop, then you can start your interrogation. And the way Zone of Truth works is you make a 15-foot circle, and once a creature walks into the Zone of Truth, they have to make a save, and you will know if they pass or fail. And if they fail, they cannot deliberately tell a lie. So that's going to help a lot with that same situation. So after you've halted them, you can use your action to make a Zone of Truth, and then you'll know if they can deliberately lie or not. And if they can't, you can take advantage of that. Just don't forget to restrain a creature after you have commanded it, because that only lasts for 1 round, but Zone of Truth lasts for 10 minutes, so you should have plenty of time once you've restrained them. So yeah, your game plan outside of combat is to be more of the interrogator of the group. You do have some light healing you can do after your combats, and you can get rid of diseases and poisoning, but for the most part, you're probably going to be using a lot of charisma checks on people to help you get to the bottom of whatever mystery is going on in your campaign, or just to get extra information or loot. Thanks for watching. If there's anything I missed, go ahead and throw that down in the comments. Like, subscribe, and yeah, D&D's dope.